Welcome back, everybody. This is lesson number 3 in Autodesk's Fusion 360. Now, we will be continuing on from the very last lesson, the cube, the very first lesson where we actually make something. And if you have not done that lesson yet, you're going to have to go back and do that. Otherwise, you will miss some very large steps and some very important key facts that we're going to be using in this next lesson. So let's just open it up. I'm going to go back to my tutorial folder that we created last time, my cube, which now you can actually see it shows what you have, and it gives you sort of an overall bird's eye view of the entire project. If you have things that are spaced out really far, then it will show everything. So you see everything in the sort of example image that Autodesk gives you. Now, it has to load from the cloud, which this is quite a small file. It's a very small project, so it takes a very short amount of time, but if it's large, it might take a bit longer. So just give it a minute. If it's taking some time, maybe your internet connection is quite slow. Who knows? But either way, we're going to go back to some basics for a second. I have the middle mouse button, which if I hold it down and drag, I'm moving the entire canvas. You can see the grid itself is moving, the grid behind my cube, and not just the cube. If I hold down Shift and do the exact same thing with the middle mouse button, I can rotate around. Most people by default go back to this when they first begin to rotate. This little rotation box, the camera angle box, shows you the top, front, right, and so on. But I use Shift and the middle mouse button because one, it rotates faster. I can spin everything quite quick, and it's a little more fluid. I don't have to move my entire mouse over to go over that camera box. Now, we have our cube. We have a 25 diameter hole on each side going right through the center of the cube, and that gave us exactly what you see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another cube, an exact copy of this cube, and enlarge it, and we're going to create something that's actually impossible to make in anything but a 3D printer. So if you have access to a 3D printer, you can print out your cube when you finish it. I'll show you how to do that at the end. But let's start out with first changing our selection option, because right now our selection option is only selecting a face, a single face. And what that means is whatever I hover over or click on, that solid face, that solid transitional plane on whatever object it is being selected. It won't select anything more. So if I select, let's say, this, this cylinder, it will not select the parts in the middle because they have an edge attached to them. So anything within an edge is a face. Let's change that. I'm going to add a couple more things to my toolbar, which I did last time as well. But this time we're going to add two different selection options. First, the body selection, which should have this 3 dots at the end. Mine didn't appear for a second. I had to click. So it says pin to toolbar. On Windows, I think it's a little arrow. You just click it and it automatically pops up there. But on Mac, on Apple, we have this. So click this. Go to the next one under Selection Priority and go down to Select Face and click that up there. Now we have both main selection options. There is also Select Edge, but we won't be using that. We don't need that right now. So if I select this one, the body, you see everything's green. Now all of a sudden, when I hover over my cube, everything is selected. It's the same as selecting the body in the file on the left. The file folder is on the left. I select this one, where it's just the one face is green, then it goes back to what we did a second ago with selecting a face. So here we go. Let's go back to select body. Now, here's an important thing that later on you'll understand why. We are working with a body right now, not a component. A component is an object with multiple body instances within it. A single object with multiple bodies attached. Separate bodies. And they can all be moved separately on their own. Right now, this is just a single-bodied object. If I made it into a component, which we'll talk about in the next lesson, then this would not make any difference. So for right now, I'm going to keep it as a body because there's not really much point in changing it. Later on, when we do our multiple cube instances inside each other, which that impossibly to create object, then yes, a component will be needed. And I'll tell you why in the next lesson. So first, let's take this body. I want you to click the body with the solid body priority selection tool, right click, and then this menu should pop up. Whether you click on it or off, it doesn't really matter because whatever you select chooses the options that appear when you right click. So left click does nothing, or it deselects it if you're selecting away from the body. So click the body, right click. I have all these options. Just as a reference, right here, this little wheel that we have are common selections or a repeat of the previous action, whatever that might be. And you might use this in the future. I use this sometimes, but not all the time. Depends on whatever workflow I'm doing, and it changes all the time. So we're going to go down here to just copy. This is one way of copying an object. You can also do other things like duplicate and duplicate in different areas like circles and duplicate over a plane, a line plane. But right now we're just going to do a single copy, Command-C, Control-C, whatever you want. So now Fusion has copied it. Doesn't tell me anything, but it has copied it. You can right-click again, and you can go to Paste. Now what happens is we have another cube that copies and pastes exactly where the original was. So right now I actually have two cubes, and how do I know? There's two bodies here, and they are both, by default, the exact same thing. We also have this thing popping up. This is our movement tool window, and this attaches to anything that you are moving at any time. Whether you're copying and pasting or you're actually moving an object, this window pops up. So right now I'm going to take this one of these arrows. This arrow moves up. This arrow moves in this direction, which is the y-axis. Y is green. Red axis is the x. I can see the red axis line right there, and the y, the green right there. But let's cancel that. And now I'm going to select body 2. You can either right click to move, or I'm going to hit M on your keyboard. M is the shortcut for move. So push escape to cancel that. Just repeat myself here. We have body 2, the copied and pasted body. M to move. I'm going to move it along the x-axis. And I'm going to move it, let's say, to -100. You can go positive 100 if you want. It is the opposite direction. So let's just do -100. There's no reason for that. It's just what I see right now and what happened. I'm going to stick with it. Hit enter and you're done. So again, M is the move, and you see this dialog box opened up. I can select something to move, or I can just select something and then hit move, and it gives me this move dialog option. It's actually quite important right now that you select it first before you move, because if you move before it's a selection, wherever my mouse goes is where that dialog, the move dialog, opens up. And if I put it here, it attaches its centered transition point to the middle of the circle, or the edge, or the corner. And if you're on a rounded object, like look at this, the inside of this cylinder, you see how the move dialog box is angling itself? You don't want that. If you're doing a very complicated object that has no reference for its location, and if you know what I mean, you'll get it quite quick, this doesn't matter. But for right now, we're going to keep it on a squared plane with a y and an x-axis. We're not going to go in between with all these other options before. I want to just keep it on the y and x-axis, which means I want this move dialog box to be lined up, these arrows lined up with the proper axis. Hit escape to cancel. All right, so middle mouse button, slide over. I'm going to zoom out a bit with my middle mouse button, the wheel. And now I have two exact same cubes. Here's the next step. We're going to make this cube bigger. We're going to keep it the exact same style. We're not going to change the cylinders. We're going to scale everything up by 2 times. And here's where we get to the modify menu. So in modify, we have the scale option. I'm going to add this to my toolbar because I use this option quite a lot. You can add other things too if you want. Combine is a very handy thing to add. I'm just going to drag my combine, if it drags, drag it over, because I use this quite a bit. But the scale option, so I'm going to select my cube, go to my newly added scale tool, or just scroll down to the modify scale. And now this opens up. Now let me just explain this for a second, because where this arrow is important. Wherever this arrow is, there's a small dot. You can't see it because it gets smaller as I zoom in. There's a small dot that's attached to the back of the arrow. That is the scaling center point, which means that this object scales from that point. It's not going to scale from the middle of this object and scale out in each direction evenly. It's going to scale in each direction evenly from this being the center point. You can change it. Right here in the scale dialog box is your point, what I just mentioned. So if I get rid of that, now it's selected, but there's no scaling point. I can move it. I can actually select a spot. The scaling points only attach to actual points, meaning corner points. It won't find the center of the circle. You have to add something else to do that. So we are going to add something in the middle to make this object scale evenly on all sides. Let's cancel this. And this is where we get into some little hacks in Fusion. This is what most programs do as well, but just a good reference, because to find the center of something, a full 3D object, is kind of confusing sometimes. So here we go, construction plane. We want a point. But that point, when we attach it to something, will still only attach to a corner point. So we have to create some kind of corner point. Now there's a few ways to go about this. One way would be to make a box or something. Let's just create a box. I'll show you one way first. Make a box, attach it to the center of our main plane. Here's the bottom plane. Attach this box, doesn't matter how big it is. Let's go 10 by 10. Make a box, enter, enter. Now it's by default again, if you remember this, it's cutting into the cube above it. We don't want that, we want a new body. But the most important point is this corner of the box, our new cube, is, let's make it 10, make it a full cube. This point is exactly in the middle of our entire canvas, which just by deduction, or Sherlock Holmes's idea, you can actually move it over to exactly this point, which is the center of our new cube. It's exactly negative 100 millimeters away. And then we can move that point exactly up to exactly 25, or just type in 25. Why 25? Because this cube is 50 millimeters tall by 50 by 50. It's 50 on all sides, and halfway to 50 is 25. So now the point of this cube is in the middle of this massive cube. So now when I select my cube and use my scaling tool, I can change the point here. So just exit, hit the X to cancel the point, and change the point to the middle of the actual cube, which is the corner of this new box that we made, this new cube. That's one way to do it. And this is what I see a lot in people. This is sort of a way that people think about it, because most people don't think about it in standard drafting techniques where you use varying vertices and different non-three-dimensional lines, 2D lines. 0.5 would make each side of it 25 by 25. Let me just show you quickly. 25 by 25. So now this cube is exactly half the size of our original cube. I'm going to hit Command Z to cancel that, or Control Z, which is undo backwards, which also is up here. I can go forwards again and backwards. Same as most programs, forward and back. Let's go back here, hit our scale, move our point of the scaling to the center of the object. I kind of wish myself, this is my own pet peeve, I wish that that was a default for Fusion. I wish that it could find the center on its own, but it does not. Unless there's something I'm missing that I don't know yet. So here we go. Center, okay. I skipped a step, I'm sorry. Center. Now we're going to double the size because I said I want to make this twice the size, so hit 2.0, which should make this cube 200 by 200. Or sorry, 50 by 50, 100 by 100. I wasn't thinking straight there. 100 by 100. Perfect. Okay. Now, we are also luckily spaced out so that this cube and this cube, the center of the actual cylinders, are the exact same. They're the exact same plane, which is very handy because now I can select this, body 2. You can actually get rid of this third body if you want. Let me just scale cube. I'm going to call it scale cube just so I remember what it is, instead of having to look at it and think back. So now my body 2, if I hit M, select it, either the body itself with your full body's priority selection tool, or on the bodies list, just hit body 2. You can select it, hit M for move, and you can move it all the way over exactly 100, which is what we did before. We did minus 100 before, so now we're going to go positive 100 to go back. And now this cube is straddling the other cube. They are exactly together with the center points of the entire cube, both cubes in the same place. Good. So now we are going to add a bit of a gap. Now what I mean by an object that is not makeable in most machines or most CNC machines or other objects that have to make solid objects, other machines that make solid objects, the only one that can make this object, being two separate cubes, together as a solid cube and not pieces like a puzzle, would be a 3D printer. Because 3D printers start at the bottom, wherever the bottom is, and it adds layer by layer by layer by layer of material to build up a solid object. While a CNC machine takes a block of, let's say, steel, takes a block this size, or maybe a bit bigger, and it cuts out all the edges, all the surfaces, and cuts out the cylinders. But the problem is, you can't cut out things where there are overhangs. You can't cut underneath things very easily. So there's many objects that CNC machines cannot make that 3D printers can. And this is going to be one of them. So just for safety, I'm going to save it. It goes to version 2 or 3, 2 I think, because we saved it once before. So now, let's do something a bit different. I'm going to take my original cube. I'm going to move it out, minus 100, same place. I'm going to put my other scale cube back. Oh, my mistake, I went the wrong direction. So, bring your scale cube back. Just hit Command Z to bring your cube back to the middle, back to the step where it was, and unhide your scale cube. Take your center cube, move it over to the scale cube at minus 100. So now the center point of this corner should be in the exact center of your this corner of your original cube. Now we're going to make a copy of this cube to subtract from this one, but we want to add a bit of a spacing between this and this. If I put this cube in the middle of this and cut this shape out of this, then all of a sudden I would have an exact sort of meeting between this cube and this cube because the walls would be the exact same, at the exact same point. They wouldn't have a gap between them, but I want to add a gap, a space. So I'm going to take this cube, I'm going to copy it, so either Command-C or you can right-click copy. I'm going to paste it, hit OK, that's fine. Take my original cube, I'm going to move it back. So body 1, let's just call it cube 1, 50 by 50. And let's call body 2. Just click it once and then click it again on the letters on the type and hit cube 2, 100 times 100, 100 by 100. You can call it anything you want technically. So we have 2 cubes now. Take my original cube, my number 1 cube, hit M, move it, I could move this over here, move it over to the center of the cube with the arrow. I didn't mention this, but don't use these other options. These give you very, very fluid movements on those planes. That's not good because now my cube is off, set by decimal points, minus 58.079 millimeters. That's too confusing and it's too hard to fix. So just cancel that, hit a cancel or escape, or Command Z, Control Z back until it's back where it was originally. Go over 100, put it back. So now I have my original cube back there. Now, let's make this one a little bit bigger. Scale. Same thing as before. Take the point, put it on this corner dot of our scaling cube that is in the center of our cube here. Okay. I did something that you didn't know about either in the rotational axis, but I'll mention that in a second. So scaling, I'm going to go 1.2, and it gives me a slightly larger cube. We'll measure it in a second. So 1.2 scale factor. Make sure your center point is at the corner of the center corner. Now if I measure it, the corner, 60. So again, the measuring tool, inspect, measure, pick a line, and you have 60. Okay. Next step is we are going to close off these cylinders. We're going to get rid of them. Because when I subtract this cube from this cube, I don't want these extra cylinder sections sort of left over or hanging down. They shouldn't be there, but I'm going to do this for safety, and it's also good practice for you to do this as well because it's handy to know how to get rid of circles or cutouts. There's a few ways to do it. So what I did before when I moved the camera that I didn't mention is when I hold Shift and move the middle mouse button, you notice how it rotates the whole camera. We've done this many times already. But if I hold Shift and click the middle mouse button, it added a green dot. Again, you can see where I click. I don't hold down that button, I just click once. That green dot is the camera rotational point. The same idea as our scaling point, putting it at the center. Now the camera rotates around that green dot. So if I put that green dot over here on this edge, not past it, it's got to be on the object, because it won't tell you where it is if you don't put it on the object, then now the camera rotates around that point. If I put it around this point here, it rotates around that point. So if you find that your camera rotation is getting confusing, you can hold Shift, middle mouse click where you want the camera to rotate, and it will move. This will become a lot more fluent as you do it. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the more you can sort of naturally interpret where it's going to go. So I do a lot of this dragging, middle mouse button, and rotation all the time. So here we go. Let's close it off. All 6 of these cylinders, we're going to close off these holes. So we don't want to use extrude. This is why in the second video I mentioned extrude and press pull do very similar things, but they're not always used for the same reason. Extrude will not touch a rounded object. A sphere, a cylinder, anything with a rounded edge, it won't touch it. It only touches flat planes, flat objects. So go to press pull, which is Q by keyboard command. Q, press pull. It's in modify. The first one is press pull. If you don't have it in your menu for some reason, again, add it to your toolbar. This is a hugely important tool that I use more often than you think. Press pull. You're going to click one of the cylinders, and now it's at a 0. And why is it saying 0? It's not that this cylinder is 0 in diameter. It's that the current state of the change that we want, is at 0. The same way that scale of 1.0 is 100%. So this is at 100%. It's a different way of looking at it. If I drag this arrow out, it will make the cylinder larger. If I drag it in, it will make it smaller. So if I know that this cylinder is 25 in diameter, 25 millimeters, then I can go all the way to the full radius, because we're coming from both sides, right? The radius is half of a diameter. So we're subtracting from all sides evenly. Every single point on this cylinder is being pulled to the center. So we can go 12.5 and it will, 15, just to be safe, and it will get rid of it all the way through. Just hit Q, go to the next one, type in 15. You can type in 20 if you want, as long as you're going past the center point. 14 almost. You see how 100. See how 14 has a small bit left? Let's go 30 just for fun. Hit enter. We're okay. It disappears. Rotate around. Hit Q again. 20. Enter. Q. 20. Enter. This one doesn't like me. Let's try that last. 20. 15. 14. Oh, okay. So there's a bit of an error here. It's throwing an error. I think it's a bit confused about how to close these two, because these are linked together as one sort of tube now. You can see that they're disappearing. So let's go 14. And now this one, let's try this. There we go, 14. No. Okay, so here is the issue. We can't close this entirely. So there's another way to do it, which we're going to do right now. This happens from time to time. It's okay. It's not a big deal. The program is not at fault necessarily. It's just that it's kind of confusing mathematically to close these things the way we're asking it to. So we're going to create a box. I'm going to make this box just slightly smaller than the entire side of this small, whatever, even if it's the full one. Let's go back and just for reference, bring it back again. I'm going to hide my scale cube. I don't want it to be touched by this change. Create a box. Create box. You can add it to your toolbar if you want. Box. Click on this side of one of the open cylinders still. Don't go to the very edge. It could cause an error or cause some extra artifacts to remain over when you add them together. You'll see in a second what I mean. So go almost to the edge. I'm snapping to this grid right here, all the way down. Now it's by default going to join, which is good. But when we pull it back in, because I want to close off the circle by adding some stuff together, I'm going to go almost all the way through the entire box, the entire cube. It's cutting it out. I don't want that. I'm going to add join. So make sure it says join. So I'm going 50 by 50 minus 55 in height. Length, width 50 minus 55 in height. Make sure it says join. If it's not join, it won't look like that. It'll look red if it's that. Intersect, don't even touch that right now. That's later on. Hit OK. And now all of a sudden it put them together, and now we have a solid surface again. And down here we have a cylinder that's pretty short. There's the bottom, there's the top. It's not very tall. I'm going to select the bottom, and I am going to pull it down 5, or go back to where it was, 50. You can actually, here's a little trick, you can actually click the edge of the outside. It will pull it to the exact spot. So again, let me just cancel that. So let me hit Q, or press pull. Click the bottom of this leftover cylinder. Click the edge of the bottom of the entire cube. And now I have a solid cube object. Still 60 by 60. Okay, let's finish this off for this lesson. So here we go. We're going to do the big subtraction. So this cube is going to go back into the center of the large cube. It's going to dwarf our original cube because it's larger. You can see how it's dwarfing the entire thing. It's inside it. Cancel that move. So click your body 4, or whatever body it is for whatever else you did if you did other steps. The 60 by 60 cube, hit M. You're going to drag it over or type in 100 because we're sticking with the same size, the same distance, 100 millimeters. Hit OK. I'm going to shift and middle mouse button click on the large cube just to give myself a camera reference. You see how I'm easily moving around it. And now I have this and this large cube at the perfect point to do what's called a combine move. This is the big end of the lesson here. Combine. I already added it to my toolbar at the beginning for a reason. So under Modify, you have a combine option. I'm sure you can figure out what it is just by the name of it, but what you're doing is combining or interacting two separate bodies together. So if you don't have it in your toolbar, add it. Pin it to your toolbar. It's very, very handy. So click the combine. Don't click anything on the canvas. Don't click any bodies. Make sure nothing's selected. If you're unsure, just hit escape a few times and everything will cancel out. All selections will cancel out. I'm going to save for just for health reasons, because stress of crashes is not fun. So we have combine. Click it. Now what opens up is this little dialog box saying target body, target bodies, tool bodies, sorry, operation, new component, keep tools. You're not going to touch these two things here. We're going to use just these first three options. So first, our target body. The target is what is being sort of attached, or the action that is attaching to whatever it is. If we want to subtract something, what body do we want to subtract from? If we want to add something to a body, what body do we want to add it to? We want to subtract from our large cube. We want to cut this center cube out, our new cube, body 4. So click on either the large cube in your big canvas or click on it in your body's drop-down menu, and it selects the large cube. The gray shows that it's not selected on the center here. Tool bodies is the thing that we are cutting with, the knife, or gluing with the glue. Whatever it might be, we are attaching this 60 by 60 cube, body 4. We're subtracting it from it, so click that. Now it says join. This is the default. You can actually, I think you can change this in the preferences for the combine option default. I'm not 100% sure. It might be different on your computer depending on the computer and the version of the program you have. But here we go. We want to cut. We don't want to intersect. We want to cut. Now all of a sudden we have our large cube blue, our middle-sized cube, our 60 by 60 by 60 cube is red. That's good. Hit OK, and all of a sudden we have that 60 by 60 cube has disappeared. It's been deleted. It's gone forever. But what is left is a gap in between this cube, the big cube, and our middle cube, which is perfect. If, just for reference, let's say I wanted to keep the 60 by 60 cube, go back for a second, Control Z, Command Z, undo, try that again, combine, big cube, tool, middle cube, you hit this Keep Tools button. This will keep the tool in existence. It uses the tool as a reference, but the tool still will exist after. Hit OK, and now that is still there, but if I move it out, then it is now still alive. Technically it's still there, but now I have the cut happening. The cuts happened, which is perfect. So here we go. I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to get rid of my middle cubes. I don't want it. So unselect your Keep Tools and cut. Perfect. So that's it. You are now set up and finished for your lesson number 3. Next time we're going to add some stuff that is very important for our 3D printing. If you know what 3D printing is, then you might know what I mean. Otherwise, you'll learn quite a bit in the next episode. So tune in next time. Thank you very much. Make sure you save it before you go. I'm on version number 5 now. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Thank you.